In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to create 5 completely different lighting setups using one simple speed light. To show you don't need a huge collection of lights to create different looks, I'm going to show you how to use 5 different modifiers to create 5 dramatically different looks. When it comes to lighting, it really is the modifier that changes the look of your light and the way it behaves, not so much the light itself. So hopefully this video will help you decide which modifiers fit the style of work you want to do most, and you can build your collection over time so you can have creative flexibility while you shoot. Today's video is kindly sponsored by my friends over at Skillshare, so I'll be back to tell you a little bit more about them later on, but for now, let's jump into our first modifier. So the first modifier that we're going to look at is my 120 centimeter octagonal softbox with a double layer of diffusion. So inside there's a small layer called a baffle, and then on the outside we've got this really big layer of diffusion material. So with a softbox, what you'll typically find is the light is kind of coming through from the back. In this case, we've mounted our speed light on a bracket on the back, and the softbox itself helps to direct all of the light forward. So the walls of the softbox kind of point it all towards the front. So what you have coming out the front is quite directional, but it's also very soft. So if we take a look over here at the images, this is the first setup that we've done with this noodle bowl. We're going to keep the scene as close as possible to the same as we can for all of the different modifiers. And as you can see, we've got some really nice soft shadows here, but there is still quite a nice bit of contrast and definition. I've got the light raised up and pointing down on the scene, and it's just ever so slightly off from the side. So it's not quite bang on 90 degrees. It's just a little bit, it's not really backlight, but it's sort of towards the back a bit, and that just means these shadows at the front are just a little bit more directional. So if you're looking to light a light and bright scene where you want a really even spread of light and you want shadows that are soft but also a little bit defined, then a big softbox can be a really good way to go. So our next modifier is no modifier. So we're going to just use completely hard undiffused light. So I've got the speed light just mounted on a light stand, and I've raised it up and I'm angling it really quite sharply downwards onto the scene, because when you're using hard light, it's often to try and mimic a sort of sun in the sky, summer's day, bright look. And at that point, the shadows would be quite short. So to achieve short shadows, we want to have it pointing down quite a lot. If we had it lower and pointing along, it's going to elongate those shadows. So I haven't yet changed the flash power. So let's go ahead and take a shot and see how it looks. I expect it's probably going to be overexposed because there's nothing diffusing that light at all. But let's take a look. Yeah, very overexposed. So let's go ahead and turn our flash power down quite a lot. I can't actually see it, but I'm just going to go for that much and then see, take another shot and see where we're at. Yep, I think we can even come down a little bit more. Okay, much better. So now we can see we've got a much more even exposure on the top. We've got a nice defined shadow. So that shadow in itself, it does look nice, but to me, it still looks a little bit too long, I think. So I'm gonna actually move it even closer, and I'm gonna increase the height a bit to see what difference that makes. Yeah, so I like the shadow a bit more, but because I've moved it further away, now there's less power hitting. So I'm going to turn the flash power up just a little bit. Okay, perfect. Maybe we could go one notch up. It's just a bit of a balancing game where you change the distance. We could even go one more. Okay, perfect. So a little bit of a balancing game. So if you move your light source further away, then obviously you're going to get less power from your light. So you might need to increase the power. If you move it closer, you might need to decrease it. It's just a case of playing around a bit. So if we have a look at the image, this kind of light, this really undiffused light, creates an extremely small light source, which creates really hard contrasty light. So we can see that in the edge of the shadows where we've got those really hard, sharp edges. There's no diffusion, so there's no real transition from the shadow to the light. It's just a really hard line, which is definitely a look. It can be really effective depending on the scene and what you're trying to create. So yeah, I definitely also use no modifier sometimes. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so our next modifier is the Beast. It is the 5 foot by 7 foot scrim. So this is just a huge panel of diffusion, it's essentially going to make the light really, really soft. So I've set up my speed light on a light stand behind the scrim, and I've moved it back far enough to make sure that the spread of light that lands on the scrim is nice and even. If you go too close, then it can create a bit of a hot spot in the middle where the light is just focusing on one small area. So you want to make sure that you're pulled back enough that the light has a chance to kind of hit the scrim evenly and then pass through it. So let's take a look at the shot that we've got so far. So you can see it's this shot on the right. On the left, I've got my live view. So with the scrim, the diffusion material is only single diffused. So it's not passing through 2 layers of diffusion like it was on the softbox, which means the light itself with the flash at the same power is a bit brighter. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and reduce my flash power a bit. So I'm just going to come to my trigger and put it down a couple of notches, and then let's take another shot and see if we can get that exposure looking a little bit better. There we go, that's much better. So what we can see, if we take our previous image, then we can see on the left, we've got the shot that we took with the softbox with double diffusion, and on the right, we've got the shot that we took with the scrim. Let's just go down to our most recent one. So if we look at the differences between these two, on the softbox shot, we've got a much more defined shadow because that light source is a lot smaller. And on the scrim, we've got these really big spread, but really soft shadows. The light itself also looks a little bit less diffused. It looks a little bit more like a morning light coming through a window or something like that, whereas the softbox provides a really even lighting. So if you want something with really soft shadows, not too much contrast, and a really kind of ever so slightly diffused look, a really large scrim can be really effective for that. Before we move on to the next modifier, I want to tell you a bit more about the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. It's the perfect platform for real working creatives like me who are always looking for something new to learn. Recently, I've been stretching my own creativity in a class by Andy Pizza all about finding your style with 5 exercises to unlock your creative identity. I've been working in a creative industry for quite some time now, and sometimes it's easy to get a bit complacent in what you do. So having some new ways to think about my own creative identity has been really interesting. Most of the classes on Skillshare are under 60 minutes with short lessons to fit any schedule. So it really is the perfect way to learn something new while you're still busy with lots of other things. As a member, you get unlimited access to thousands of inspiring classes with no ads, hands-on projects, and feedback from a huge community of other Skillshare users. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of a premium membership on Skillshare, so you can explore your creativity and learn something new. Thank you so much again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video and supporting food photography education. So let's move on to our next modifier. Okay, so for this next modifier, I've actually gone ahead and switched out the background for a dark one. So the last 2 modifiers we're going to look at is a 1x4 strip softbox and a snoot, and we'll get to that one in a minute. This particular modifier is much smaller than the other ones that we've looked at so far, and it creates a really concentrated beam of light. So it's very, very small, but it's still diffused. So unlike the hard light, the undiffused one where we created really, really hard shadows, this is still going to give us somewhat of a soft shadow. So on the front of the softbox, I've also got a honeycomb grid, which just further sort of pushes the light forward. So rather than coming from that front layer of diffusion and spilling out, that honeycomb grid just helps keep it moving forwards, which just creates a bit more of a directional line, and it avoids any more light spill on the rest of the surface. So I've switched out for a dark backdrop. So let's have a look how that looks. So on the left, we've got our live view. I went ahead and kept the composition exactly the same, so you can really compare between all of the modifiers, how differently they behave. And then on the right, you can see our final shot. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take one more and then show you. I've got my flash set to 1/4 power now, so that's relatively high. But what you can see from this image is that really on the back of the scene, and even sort of down the front, we don't really have too much light going on, which really helps create that dark and moody look. And the light is really focused on the front bowl. In terms of positioning, I've sort of really kept the light in line with that front bowl. So the back bowl is getting illuminated a little bit mostly at the front, but even by the time the light reaches the back, it's kind of fallen off a lot. So that helps me keep the exposure of the noodles and the garnishes really nice and bright and defined, because even in dark and moody food photography, we still want to have a good exposure on our subject. We still want to actually see what we're looking at. We don't want everything to be dark, but you can see from the histogram, if we have a look up here, that largely this photo is really falling in the darks range, and that could potentially be underexposed, but I am happy with the exposure of the noodles. So that is how I would use this modifier to create a more dark and moody look. Okay, so for our last modifier, we have a slightly unusual and kind of fun one. It's probably not one that you would end up using as a key light very often, but it can create some cool effects, and that is a snoot. So a snoot is a really cone-shaped modifier that basically just sends your light down a little tube and out of a really small opening at the front. Now on this particular snoot, I do also have this little honeycomb grid attached to the end. You can of course use it without, but I'm just going to keep it on to really focus that light because we are going for a dark and moody scene. So when I'm working with a snoot, it is a little bit more difficult to see where the light is going to fall. So if you do have a speed light that has a modeling light, which is like a very dim light, so you can kind of see where the light's going to fall, that can be really useful. So in this case, it is a little bit dim. It's kind of hard to see with the ambient light going on, but I can see that I'm directing the light sort of across the front of the bowl and then just onto the surface. I did take a couple of shots. If we just come back to the computer, you can see here I really pointed it and spotlighted right on the top of the noodles, but I felt like it kind of lost the context of the table and it just looked a little bit just not very natural. When I moved it forwards a bit, we've ended up with this shot. So we've got some nice illumination on the front of the noodles and that bowl, but we also have a little bit of light spill onto the surface, which just keeps a little bit more context going on the scene. So yeah, normally I would end up using a snoot as a secondary light in a multi-light setup. So I might use it to illuminate a backdrop or create a bit of a rim light behind something, but it can be fun now and again to crack it out as your key light modifier as well. So they have 5 different ways to modify one single speed light. So I hope this is showing you that you don't need to go out and buy loads of different lights to create different looks. Instead, you can just get a different modifier for your one speed light and create something completely unique. So let me know in the comments if you have a favorite modifier or which look you're excited to try. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.